Hey folks, welcome back to Threes In. Bobo here. So, we've all heard that phrase, gone but not forgotten. Cute little phrase it is, I suppose. But today I'm going to talk about gone and forgotten. And these are things that came to mind that we used to do in the 38 in training in the 60s and 70s. We no longer do. And a few other things along the way. And a couple of things we got rid of here within the last couple of years that I think is a tragedy, but be that as it may, you can make your own call on it. So that being said, one of the first things that came to mind when I began thinking about this was the blindfold cockpit check. We used to have to do that. And it was one of those things that created a little anxiety. I mean, we all studied, good little gooners, so we all studied for the blindfold cockpit check. We'd go over to the link trainers and sit there and practice and so forth. And then the day would come, our IP would take us out. Like my IP, Rick Vale we had 4 students there at his desk. So all 4 of us went out there, kind of like a mother hen and a bunch of little chicks out there. So we'd climb up, put on this blindfold, and he said, okay, where's the ADI? And you go, maybe there. Yeah. HSI, okay, right down underneath it, and altimeter and airspeed and RPM and where's this? And it was just a familiarity check. I often thought that, maybe I thought it at the time, I don't know, but I often thought that seeing a guy up there with a blindfold going through all this crap kind of reminded me of like the instructor trying to teach Stevie Wonder how to fly. Anyway, I digress again. Ron's not the only one that can digress. Okay. The other thing that kind of came to mind and got me thinking along this thread, if you will, how do they do blindfold cockpit checks in glass cockpits? I'll have to ponder and get back to you on that one. The next thing that we used to do that went away, thankfully, before I got to the training command, were single engine overhead patterns. And I've heard guys talk about having to fly through those or sit through those or whatever. And they were miserable because you take off. Right after takeoff, you request a closed pattern and pull up into the closed pattern. And then you fly this simulated single engine. Now what they're going to do, to make it as difficult as possible, they're going to pull the inboard engine back to 60%. So now here you are, you're heavyweight, very heavyweight, and you're rolling off the perch and starting downhill. And from the guys that I talked to that used to fly, those things were terrifying, but they made it through it. I can't imagine what those guys flying those things at Reese or Willie, and maybe even Vance on hot days, what those things were like. I'm glad they took them out of the syllabus before I got there. So we didn't do that. Another thing, when they, as the airplane evolved and the charts got even more accurate, they discovered that in reality they didn't have the thrust available that they needed to fly those things with. So it's a good thing. I don't know if we lost any airplanes due to single engine overheads or not. I might have to check on that somehow. Anyway, let's get back on track here. The next thing that we used to do that's no longer in the syllabus was engine shutdowns in flight. We would go up, and I remember doing this. We'd go up and in the syllabus at the whatever time it was, we'd take an engine and shut it down. And then we would go through the checklist for normal engine start, pick up the airspeed parameters and so forth, and then take the throttle, put it in idle, I think, and then hit the start button. And if that's not the right sequence, I'll check on it here. But anyway, if that's not the right sequence, that's why we use the checklist. Okay. And the engine would start, and we reorient in the area, and then we'd shut down the other engine, and on that engine, we'd use the alternate checklist, which is get the airspeed that you need, and then take the air throttle and put it in burn, and it would relight. Well, that was all well and good, and but when you think about it, why do we have to do that? What was there to gain about it in there? I mean, we know the procedures and so forth. Well, they took that out of the syllabus because they were having a lot of aircraft coming back single engine because they couldn't get the damn engine started, one or the other. And they said, you know what, is this really worth it? The answer was, not really. You know, I used to tell my students, the thing I don't want to do, that I'm very wary of, is going bird hunting single engine. That's just not a good situation to be in. Engine shutdowns, okay. The next thing that comes to mind that they used to do, now, it was in the syllabus when I started T-38s, but it then subsequently got dropped out. And that was four-ship close trail. Now, in close trail, what we'd do, they'd call for it on the radio, of course, and the airplanes would slide in behind each other like this, and you'd put your canopy bow right on the tailpipes. So we're all like this and starting downhill, and you got four airplanes going downhill, and then lead would pull up and you'd stay in close trail going over the top. We'd do a loop like that. That was kind of fun to do, but it was also, it was fun to do on one hand when it worked out. It was not fun to do when it didn't work out. Because if lead didn't have enough smash going into the loop, 3 and 4 were just really struggling to stay in formation, and often couldn't. And I remember hearing radio call like, Reno 174 is out, and then Reno 173 is out, 172 is breaking out, and then lead would say, "This Reno 17 lead, oh crap." And then you'd have when you got 3 airplanes, like that, 4 airplanes in the area, they're all taking different directions to break out to ensure they don't hit each other. Now, how do you get those things back together? Think of herding cats. Okay. Sometimes I don't think they did. The other thing we used to do were fix-to-fixes. I don't even think they talk about those things anymore. But you see, we didn't have GPS. All we had was TACAN. So we would do a fix-to-fix. And once you got onto it, they really aren't that hard to do. Matter of fact, I did one in a DC-9 once just to... I needed to go from A to B, and they didn't have whatever I needed. So I said, I'll just do a fix-to-fix over there, and just flew over there. Totally astonished the co-pilot who came up out of regionals and stuff like that. Anyway, so we would do fix-to-fixes, and they could be kind of challenging for the IP and for the student. You had to be cognizant of where you were in the area as you set them up, and then you had to watch the student. You don't know which way he was going to go with it. Okay. The other thing that came into play with those was winds. I have flown fix-to-fixes in Oklahoma with 120 to 150 knot winds up there, the jet stream coming down, and that could be very, very challenging in that case. You ended up all over Oklahoma and Kansas, and it was sporting at times. All right. They don't do that anymore because they got GPS and they got that little pink line or magenta line. Is that all I wanted to say on that one? Yeah. The last thing I'll introduce here in this thread is that we don't... No, it won't be. The second to the last thing is flight line snack bars. Every base used to have a flight line snack bar. Boy, those were really good. We had one at Randolph. That was great. It was a great place to eat. And they were eventually shut down. What happened is the BX, the AFIs, discovered how much money those snack bars were making. So they shut them down. They claimed they got too expensive to operate, this, that, and the other, for the return they got, and they replaced them with vending machines. And I don't even know if they even have them today, but you could get some pretty good meals there at on the Flightline snack bars. And through the system, some were better than others. Like we would fly up to Tinker. They had a Flightline snack bar that was outstanding, and they were infamous for their Tinker burgers. So we'd go up there and get a Tinker burger. The last thing is gone, but this is not forgotten. our formation, approach, and landings in the T-38. We did away with those. They were declared too dangerous. They were declared kind of incidental, if you will, because the major comms aren't using them that much anymore. And I think that was a big mistake. And it came about because of an accident in Vance a few years ago where an aircrew was killed because the student screwed up the approach and the IP didn't catch it soon enough, and they ended up dying. Now that in itself is a tragedy for sure, but every bit as much as that is a tragedy, it's also a tragedy that the Air Force capitulated to that lawyer that the kids' parents retained, that came on and telling us how dangerous the T-38 was and how old it was and this, that, and the other. And my initial thought to that was, excuse me, how many hours do you have in a 38? How many formation, approach, and landings have you done? And until you've done a couple hundred of them, just sit back and push pencils and go do your lawyer stuff, but stay out of my business. But a few of our blue suit politicians capitulated, and we no longer do formation, approach, and landings anymore. And like I said, I think that is a tragedy, and that has not been forgotten. Anyway, you've heard my morning rant. You've heard a little bit of some fun stuff of things that we used to do and some not so fun stuff that we used to do. It's not yet forgotten because I just brought it up, but just gives you a little more insight into how sporting it could be flying 38s back in the 60s and the 70s, and in some cases into the 80s. That being said, this is Bobo. It's great to see everybody this morning. Base gear, stop.